Hey guys, this is Bumpkin. So, the beginning of this video is a little bit different than the other ones. Something happened with the Twitch stream. I just finished recording a little while ago, and something happened with the stream where it glitched out for just a minute near the beginning of the video, and I thought everything was fine. When I went back to review and make a highlight on Twitch, I found that it had lost the first, I don't know, 5 minutes or so of the recording. So I'm just recording this intro right now just to let you know where the where the recording picks up is right at the intro of talking about Amazing Spider-Man number 49. And really what I'm doing is recapping what happened in the last couple of issues. So you're not really missing anything, especially if you've watched the last couple episodes at least. You know what happens in Amazing Spider-Man. And so that's all I was doing when the video was about to pick up, is I was just recapping what happened there. So apologies for the weird start to this. I don't know what happened with Twitch. So this is a good lesson. I'm going to start streaming and recording instead of just relying on the stream, because I don't want that to happen again. I'm glad that it didn't happen halfway through and I lose half of the video, because it takes a while to go through all these things. So again, you're not missing too much. So the video is going to kick in just a minute, right at the very beginning of when I talk about Amazing Spider-Man number 49. So thanks for hanging in there with me, and I hope you enjoy. Paid Craven because he said Craven never finished the job. So Craven comes back into town wanting to get his money. Of course, this is after Amazing Spider-Man number 40, where Norman lost his memory. And we'll talk a little bit about that in this issue in a few minutes. But Norman lost his memory, didn't remember anything about having ever met Craven. So that whole thing happened. And then last issue, number 48, there was a Vulture popped up, but it was a new Vulture. It was a guy called Blackie. It wasn't Adrian Toomes. And we still haven't even heard him be known as Adrian Toomes yet. But he managed to get his hands on the Vulture's wingsuit, and he terrorized the city, committing crimes, robbing things, robbing places, and Spider-Man had to stop him as well. But Spider-Man had a cold or some kind of virus, and he had a tough time with it. So this is the sort of the wrap-up of all that. So this issue actually has Kraven and Vulture together, and Spidey has to take both of them down. And that's most of what the issue is here, is Spidey fighting both of those guys. Now, the cool thing about last issue is that Spider-Man didn't win in the end. He was left lying motionless on a snowy rooftop. And, you know, because he's sick. He's sick as a dog. And, so I thought that was nice, because typically comics from this era, the heroes don't lose at the end of an issue. Now, obviously, Spider-Man's going to win out at some point in this story, but for the end of last issue, he didn't win, and that's pretty cool to see. It's kind of neat to see a little bit of change from the norm, especially in this day and age. And I will mute my iPad, and that's actually, I'm glad that popped up, because I got to get my notes up. So, when I tweet these out every day, I actually have notes on my iPad, and I just use the Notes app, and I have got just an obscene amount of, well, just for example, I mean, there's all my notes for all the different Amazing Spider-Mans, and, you know, all the Spider-Mans that we've talked about so far, and I've got all of that for all the titles that we read. So it's pretty cool. Takes a little bit of time, but that's all right. So I've got my notes here just to make sure I mention anything that I called out here. So yeah, Spider-Man's on the top of a building, motionless. He's sick. He can barely move. He actually gets a little bit worse in this issue. You can tell he's sick because he has all the little yellow spots around his head. I like the visual depiction of his illness. But he's woozy. He's just trying to get home. And I called out this page on Twitter, all except the first panel and the last panel. So everything in the middle. And this is going to sound weird, but I really like this page, because this, to me, and I'm going to read what I put on Twitter. I said, this may sound strange, but this type of sequence is one of the things I was most excited to see once Peter moved out of Aunt May's house. Peter sneaking into his apartment in the nick of time is one of the unsung staples of Spider-Man lore. We are going to see this kind of sequence so many times throughout the coming weeks, months, and years. This happens all the time where Spider-Man sneaks into an apartment. The situation I think about most is when the landlord or the landlady's beating on his door demanding rent, and he has to sort of sneak in. There's later on, it's not going to happen until the 70s, but I know there's one point in time where he gets an apartment with like a skylight that opens and closes, and then he goes in that way. And so many times he'll crawl in through that skylight, won't be able to get his costume off in time, so he'll hide in the shower or something like that. Just like here, where he's not able to get his costume off in time for Harry to walk in on him, and he has to cover up with a blanket. So I know that's kind of a weird thing to point out. It's like, oh, big deal, he's crawling in a window. But this is classic Spider-Man. This is classic Spider-Man, Peter Parker's problems, having to get in, and hide before somebody walks in on him. So I just thought that was neat. So we see Kraven here is upset because the Vulture has defeated Spider-Man. And it's on the news. He's watching the news here. And, he's mad because he's a proud hunter and he thinks that Spider-Man is his prey by right and that he should be the one to defeat Spider-Man. He's basically, these pages are just him throwing a tantrum. Meanwhile, Aunt May and Anna Watson come to check up on Peter. He's still in bed with his costume on. And of course, Aunt May, worried, sick, calling the doctor. Back in the 60s when you could call a doctor, I guess, and they would come make a house call, I suppose. That's not how it works now, but I guess it worked that way back then. I didn't tweet this, I wanted to, but I just think this panel looks funny. I just think that, if you take all the dialogue out of it, I just think it looks like Seductive Peter. And I just think Seductive Peter looks funny. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get my iPad to not turn off so that I can freely jump to my notes whenever I need to. There we go. So yeah, Seductive Peter, I just thought he was funny. I should have called him out on Twitter, but no. So anyway, the Vulture is flying around. One thing I did point out too is that Vulture makes a big deal about the world's first airborne act of piracy. Well, not really, because Stiltman robbed a helicopter mid-flight in Daredevil number 8 as well. And I don't know if that's more or less impressive that he could extend his legs up that high or that there's a guy flying up to the helicopter. I'm not sure which is better. They're both kind of lame, actually. But and again, this is not Adrian Toomes' Vulture, so this is still Blackie, the criminal Vulture. You can tell because he's got the helmet on and because we read it. But a lot of this issue is Spider-Man, right here, Vulture causing problems. Kraven's going to come out to get him. Spider-Man has to fend off both of them and Nurse Cold at the same time, which seems pretty impossible, but that's what Spider-Man does. So we get a little bit more interaction with Gwen and Mary Jane. I love when these two pop up. I love that these two are friends. I just love, I say it every week, and I'm going to say it every week. These sequences are my favorite part of these issues. Obviously, I love the fights and the superheroics, and it said I just went offline, so hold on. Let me double check. I don't think I did, though, because OBS is still up and running. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I love these sequences, though, with Peter and the gang, because I just like seeing them develop their friendship. It wasn't so long ago that Peter and Harry weren't friends and that Gwen thought Peter was stuck up. So now they're all hanging out, and I just love it. Peter in his purple pajamas. He can't go anywhere. So he just kind of has to sit and wait. Meanwhile, Kraven and the Vulture are going to have it out a little bit. So this is a nice fight between the two of them. No Spider-Man, just seeing two bad guys throw down for a bit. But it's not long before Peter hears about it. He's got to throw on his costume. But lo and behold, his virus is gone. And he feels good now. He mentioned something that maybe his spider powers somehow helped him to heal. He doesn't really know. We don't really know. I guess it was just a 24-hour bug. But he gets over it and he feels good. Now, the interesting thing about this though, and I was wondering if they were going to play out on this, is that when he goes out right here to take on Kraven and the Vulture, Anna and Aunt May are still at his apartment. So, I was wondering, are they going to walk in? Did he pull a Ferris Bueller and stuff his sheets with pillows or something? But it turns out, spoiler alert, that doesn't happen. So he's able to get back in before they see anything. And then the rest of this is just a cool fight. Again, John Romita on pencils. I love it. Super classic. My favorite depiction, or one of my favorite depictions. I love... Opie! Thanks for that sub, man. I appreciate it. That Twitch Prime. I love you. Subscribe for 18 months. Holy cow. I really, really appreciate that, man. That is so awesome. You got an emote? Thanks, Opie. Let me see if I send... Okay, cool. I've never done that before. And yeah, so if you're actually... So I mentioned my YouTube channel, my new YouTube channel earlier. I move all of these to YouTube. But if you're watching this on YouTube later, this is a live stream on Twitch right now, and I don't really edit out any of the live streamy stuff because I wanted to do it as a stream rather than a video because I wanted to interact with people. I love comic books, and I love talking about comic books, and I wanted to talk about these books with people as I'm talking about them. So this is a live stream right now, and I'm not going to edit out any of the notifications or anything. So if you're watching on YouTube later, that's the deal with these videos. I just trim off the ends, to clean them up a little bit. But other than that, this is a live stream, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about comics. So yeah, Spider-Man, Vulture, and Kraven, and this is just, the rest of the issue is just a cool fight between the three of them. We get some awesome action shots from John Romita. Again, one of my favorites. I love classic Spidey more than any other design. I love small eyes, wide, not simplified web pattern. This is my favorite depiction of Spidey, and it's only going to get better. John Romita is only going to even come into his own style some more. But yeah, the rest of it is just a fight. Kraven's using those weird chest rays again, which seems super not Kraven-like to me. I don't know if he's ever going to address that at some point, where maybe he says, I don't need any specialized gadgets. I should be able to take down my prey on my own. I don't know if we're going to, if he's going to acknowledge that, but we're going to get to that point at some point. And yeah, just super cool fight. Spidey manages to take both of them down. I do love the way that Spider-Man takes down Kraven. He just wallops him in the stomach so hard, Kraven just falls to his knees. And that's it. And that's all really, obviously, Kraven's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. And he is powerful, yes. But Spider-Man really should be able to take him a little better than what is depicted quite often. So right here, this panel right here just socks him in the gut, and Kraven's down, and that's it. And I just thought that was really, cool. And he just falls to the ground. That's it. Webs him up, takes a couple pictures. Once again, sneaking back into his room, and I love that panel of him jumping in the window, sneaking back into his room. Nobody else is the wiser. The doctor comes by. Peter, you're A-okay. Must have been a 24-hour thing. And that's it. So this was a good wrap-up to this 3-issue story arc that we've been going through. And actually, I'm really excited, though, because next issue is the classic, one of the most classic covers, classic pages, classic stories of all time, Amazing Spider-Man number 50, Spider-Man No More. I read it and posted about it on yesterday. Today's Monday, the 26th. Posted about it yesterday. What a great story. And Spider-Man is in it almost none. And it's still a fantastic Spider-Man story. Super classic. I can't wait to talk about that next week. All right. So moving on, Tales of Suspense number 90. Real quick, Tales of Suspense is a double feature. It's been going on for 31 issues now between Captain America and Iron Man. I wonder why they put, you know what? I'm curious about something. Let's do a little digging. Let's dig into the archives. Because one thing I just noticed is that Yeah, this is interesting. I didn't notice this on Twitter, but I just now noticed it. I'm looking at all my notes here that have all the covers. This is the first one that has Captain America's name before Iron Man's. All the rest of them, since Captain America has joined the book back in issue number 59, every single one of them has said Tales of Suspense featuring Iron Man. I'm sorry, yeah, Iron Man and Captain America. And now they flip flop the names, and I don't know why that is. But let's see, number 91, which I read and posted about today, it's actually flipped backwards. So I wonder if they made a mistake, or if they're going to start flip flopping them back and forth. I can tell you that 99, issue number 99, which we'll get to in 9 weeks, of Tales of Suspense is the last issue of Tales of Suspense. Then it converts into just Captain America, starting with number 100. So there is no Silver Age Captain America number 1. I'm not saying there's not a Captain America number 1, but just from this era, there's not. Iron Man will get his own Iron Man number 1 in 68, which we will hit right at the start of the new of 2021. 2021, yeah. Forgot what year it was. So he'll start over with number 1. Captain America will continue on in this title with issue number 100. But so I don't know. Maybe they'll flip flop him. Let's keep an eye on that though, week to week, and we'll see what they do with that. So I will say too that this has been a pretty solid book. Both of the Iron Man stories and Captain America stories have mostly been okay. But this Iron Man story, this is the second part to the story last week, and this story is super lame. The Iron Man story is. Excuse me. And I'm not even going to spend a lot of time talking about it because the story is dumb. So if you remember last week, the Melter got out of prison because he just so happened to know how to make a melting ray in prison, and he was able to get the materials, and he was able to do it without the guards noticing. And his big plot was he was going to go to Stark Industries and force Tony Stark to build him a smaller version of the gun he already has. That's it. That's the whole story. The Melter just wants a smaller gun. That's all that's motivating the Melter all through this story. And I just think it's kind of ridiculous. I did call out here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Only your genius can make a smaller transistorized version of my oversized melting gun to make me more powerful than ever. How is a smaller gun going to make it more powerful? I don't know. It's pretty silly. I did notice that. So Tony Stark does make him a smaller gun, right? And I did think I thought this was pretty representative of maybe cell phone culture now. And he says, it's still too big. I wanted something I could hide away in my pocket, something small. And it just made me think, because right as I was reading this is when Apple announced the iPhone 12 and the 12 mini and the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max and the 12 Super Ultra Pro Max Deluxe Unlimited. Who wins in a battle between the Melter and Mr. Freeze? Asks Opie Online on Twitch. I don't know. Well, actually, nobody would, because the Melter is Marvel and Mr. Freeze is DC. But you could attribute that to the Melter and Icicle. Or wait, no, not Icicle. Blizzard. He's a cold-based villain in Marvel. Well, actually, that's a big debate. Who would win between the Human Torch and Iceman from the X-Men? I don't know. And they actually have tangled before. So that's a good question. I'm inclined to think that the heat-based character would win. But I don't know. That's an age-old question. Who would win in a battle between a heat-based character and an ice-based character? Good question. But I mean, this story is dumb. I mean, the Melter gets his gun. Who's the ice guy in Spider-Man's amazing? That's Iceman. So that's Iceman from the X-Men. So that guy versus the Human Torch. And fun fact, in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, it was originally supposed to be Human Torch and Iceman as his amazing friends. But they couldn't use Human Torch for whatever reason. Nobody really knows why. It's whatever, he couldn't be in the old Fantastic Four cartoons either. He was replaced with Herbie the Robot. But so they put Firestar instead of Human Torch, who was another fire-based character. So yeah, he had a fire-based friend and an ice-based friend, and they never fought those. So I like to think that if they had fought in that cartoon, that would have given us our official answer, but we never got that. So yeah, the Melter gets his gun and he tries to take out Tony Stark, and because there's always a crowd of people outside Stark Industries for whatever reason, the cops pull up and see what's going on. Of course, Tony's got some women's out there who are concerned about him, but not too concerned because what panel is it? Right here. Poor Tony. Do you think he's still alive in there? He'd better be. We have a date tonight. So you can see the compassion, the caringness for Tony coming out. But actually, one thing was cool. I'll go back a couple pages. The Melter does supposedly blast Tony in the chest with his ray right here on this page. He has a dial on his gun of what he wants to melt. You can wait, let me do this. Whether it's, does he want to melt flesh? Does he want to melt stone, metal, or wood? Why not just have like a heat ray that melts everything? I don't know why he has to have a dial to turn it, but whatever. And metal's written upside down. Like, it should be flat. Like, if you think about rotating it, if you rotate it around to metal, then metal's going to be upside down. So metal, in this picture, the word metal should be... I don't know why I look for dumb stuff like that. But yeah, he blasts Tony in the chest, thinks Tony's dead, but of course Tony wears his chest plate to protect his heart. So, I guess one cool thing about this, maybe kind of cool, is because the Melter did kind of damage Tony's armor. So the rest of the story is Tony in his classic Iron Man armor, the gold armor, flying around fighting the Melter. Now, I don't remember this armor having jets in its boots. And what's interesting here, when he wore this armor, like, he was never really able to fly, like, really fly. Like, he would make mention about, I'll use my transistorized jets to get me from here to there. Hopefully they have enough juice or whatever. Now he just flies. I mean, it's been a long, long, long time now since Tony has said anything about running out of power. I guess they got tired of reading about it, or maybe the readers got tired of... maybe they got tired of writing about it, or maybe the readers got tired of reading it. I know I did. Removing that one plot point out of every issue made this title infinitely better for me. Now he never complains about running out of power. He just flies around everywhere. He just shoots repulsor rays out of his hands whenever he wants to. Never worries about running out of power anymore. And even in his old classic gold armor, he's just flying around everywhere. And I'm fine with it. Iron Man's supposed to be able to fly. That's it. We don't need any reasoning beyond that. And it's just a battle between Iron Man and the Melter. And the way Iron Man wins is that the melting gun, malfunctions. I mean, that's it. You can see here, something's happened to the gun. Can't hold on to it. It's getting red hot, getting hotter. Now, wasn't that a shame? It's like touching live coals. And let's see, I was going to see if he called it out. Stark wrecked the other melting ray in the lab, and now I'll crush this one like a toy. That's pretty much it. See, like I said, this issue, it's hard to talk about these issues that are pretty silly and where it's just fights. When we get into the 70s is when these comics, I like to think, get a little bit more cerebral, I guess. But it's sort of hard to talk about some of these issues because it's just simple, silly stories that, I like to call out things like moments that happen and character development that we see continuing from issue to issue, that kind of stuff. Sometimes you just don't have any of that. Sometimes it's just a straight up fight between a hero and a villain, and it's a silly story, and that's it. So and that's it for this story. I didn't really love the Iron Man side of this. Now, the Captain America story, on the other hand, if you remember last issue, he was called to Seagull Island. It turns out, or maybe he was called to Seagull Island 2 issues ago. At the end of that issue / the beginning of last week, we found out that it's the Red Skull back from the supposed dead, who he tricked Cap into coming to this island by saying that Bucky was still alive. Remember last week we talked about how everybody has robots. All the bad guys have the robots in the 60s. Red Skull had a big, purple, ugly-looking robot, and then he also had a perfectly lifelike-looking robot that looked like Bucky. So Cap's in a trap. It's one of those traps that I like to see in TV movies. Oh, I can almost do it here. Like the walls are closing in. I'm not doing a good job of it, but yeah, the walls are closing in. So the walls are closing in on Cap. He managed to get out of this though. But this is kind of cool. This is a sort of a straight up fight between Cap and the Red Skull. And anytime you get a Cap versus Red Skull story, you're in for a treat because there's almost nothing more classic than Cap and Red Skull. Maybe Spider-Man and Green Goblin, maybe Batman and Joker. I feel like I'm forgetting, Daredevil, Kingpin, or Daredevil Bullseye, maybe. The classics. Thor and Loki. That kind of stuff. But yeah, this one they're on an island. Red Skull's got Cap trapped. He manages to get out. He's flying away in his ship. Cap grabs hold of it, chasing after him. Now, the only thing I don't like about this is the Red Skull's plot. This is very Brainiac from Superman. His Red Skull's big plot is to envelop cities into a giant bubble, just like what you see here. And he actually does it right here. Wait, isn't this is real, right? I couldn't quite remember if this was maybe him just imagining what he wants to do. But yeah, I even made a note. This is an unimpressed Brainiac ass. Yeah, but can you shrink it? Because Brainiac likes to bottle cities and then shrink them and collect them in his ship. Red Skull is doing no such thing. He's just wrapping them in a bubble, and I don't know what he's going to do with them, but he's going to hold them for ransom. And anytime we've seen this before, I think Doctor Doom did it in Fantastic Four number 4, was it? Where he launched the Baxter building up into space, and the Fantastic Four manages to defeat him and sit the Baxter building back down. Even as a kid, these kinds of stories bothered me because what about all the underground, like the sewer pipes and all the underground plumbing and that kind of stuff? Even as a kid, that kind of stuff. These are comic books. You're not supposed to think about that kind of stuff. But even as a kid, I thought, what about all the plumbing and all the underground, the electrical and all that stuff? How do you go about fixing that? Can you imagine this city is going to be without water and sewer and electricity for weeks, if not months? I mean, even though Cap does manage to get the city put back, the damage is done. I mean, sure, Cap managed to make sure the city didn't get completely destroyed, but it's gonna be like the Dark Ages there for a long time until they can get all that stuff fixed. So I always have a problem with that kind of story. So the Red Skull scoops up a city. I'm not quite sure if this is supposed to be New York or not. All I need to do is convince Washington. No, I'm not sure what city this is. But he scoops it up in a bubble. So Cap is, jumping around through fighting off robots in Red Skull's ship. Now, the way that Cap actually gets the Red Skull to put the city back, and this is really dumb, is that right here, you've released a safety. If you press that button again, the bubble will break, and then, of course, the city will crash down. Says, you can't do that, basically. And then Red Skull says, give me your word as an Avenger to serve me for 24 hours. And Cap says, I have no other choice. I give you my word. I'll serve you for 24 hours. The minute Cap says that, Red Skull puts the city back in its place. So the Red Skull goes through all of this to create this technology to be able to wrap an entire city in a bubble and lift it up and threaten the world, only to say, this no longer interests me now that Captain America says he'll serve me for one day. Even for the 60s, that was dumb. And what's even dumber is the minute he puts the city back down, Cap could just sock him in the jaw and take him to jail. But no, Captain America, I gave my word. There's no way out of this. I have to do it. It's, make it to where he's mind wiped or something. No, there's no kind of brainwashing. Captain America just said, Scout's honor, I give you my word. I'll serve you for 24 hours. And we're going to talk about that more next week. It doesn't get any better. It's silly, and a little bit of a spoiler alert for the next issue. Red Skull apparently squanders 23 hours and 55 minutes out of the 24 hours that he has Captain America working for him. I mean, it's silly. So he does go on TV and he says that Cap serves me now, and everybody says that Captain America is a traitor, and more on that next week. But what up, Pete? So yeah, that it's cool to see Captain America versus Red Skull. Undoubtedly cool. And we're going to get more of that, I want to say. So we get more of that next issue, obviously, in number 91. And then we get more of that beginning again in issue 97, I believe, for a cool little 3 or 4 part story arc there. But when you throw in this whole thing of I promise, and that's happened before too, where the hero has given a promise to a villain in order to get the villain to stop doing something, and it holds, like back in the day, I guess heroes were so virtuous that their word meant everything. Nowadays, Captain America would just punch him out. I don't know. So a little bit disappointing ending here, but Cap versus Red Skull otherwise is really cool. So more on that next week. All right, next up we have Daredevil number 29. Now, you guys know that the last few issues of Daredevil I have not enjoyed. We had the whole Mike Murdock thing, which is still going on. Not quite as much, though. He had, there was a whole Stiltman, Masked Marauder business, which was silly enough. And then last week was the really bad issue where Matt Murdock was speaking about the legality of aliens invading Earth. And then aliens actually did. And they were going to rob the Earth of its minerals by stealing everybody's sight. But it just so happened that they didn't count on the only blind superhero defeating it. So that whole thing was dumb. This issue gets back to basics a little bit, and it's a little bit better. So the gist of this one is that the Masked Marauders' remaining goons team up with a mobster known as the Boss to learn Daredevil's secret identity. Because remember, the Masked Marauder, he's out now. Like he's been carted off to jail, basically. Or no, he supposedly died, I think. I can't quite remember. But he's out of commission either way. He's out of the game. So, but he still has some guys left over, some henchmen left over. They join up with a guy called the Boss. And they kidnap Karen Page to learn Daredevil's secret identity. How Daredevil saved her when he gets captured as well. So, pretty interesting. It's a pretty good street level story. It's always fun to see Daredevil take on a bunch of street level thugs or whatever. I mean, it's always cool to see Daredevil take on superpowered villains as well to figure out how he's going to overcome those odds. But it's cool to always see him do some street level stuff too. So this is a pretty good issue. The only thing is the first couple pages. The first page really bothers me. So let's read what Matt Murdock is saying. He says, "My mind's made up. I can't wait any longer. I've just got to ask Karen to marry me." Okay, so let's stop right there. Matt has feelings for Karen. Karen has feelings for Matt. We know this, but they've never really divulged those feelings to each other, which means we've never even seen them out on a date. And this has happened, I don't know what was going on in the 60s. Like, women were just objects to be married off, I guess, or at least in comics they were. Because Happy was doing this same thing several issues ago, where he was talking about he had an engagement ring for Karen. He was going to ask her to marry him. We haven't even seen them go on like a real date, or even if we have, it was only like 1 or 2 dates. We haven't seen them in a relationship. you think about Peter and Mary Jane getting married, and that won't happen until the 70s, or is it the early 80s? I'm not sure. But we see them, they're together for years in real time. In our time, they're together for years in a relationship. We see that, and then they finally get married, which is the culmination of that. Back in the 60s, dudes in comics were just like, I really like this pretty girl over here. I'm going to ask her to marry me. We're not even done with the second half of this page yet. So Matt just wants to marry Karen for no real reason. And then the second piece of that is even worse, where he says, now I just have to decide, do I propose to her as Matt Murdock or as my own twin brother Mike? So he's wondering which identity of his should he marry her or should he propose to her under? Mike Murdock doesn't exist. Mike Murdock supposedly is Daredevil, supposedly can see. I mean, how are they, how terrible would it be for them to get married, her thinking that it's Mike? I mean, oh my gosh, there's just so many things wrong with that. It really bothers me. And I know that they were trying to be clever. Good old Stan was trying to be clever with this, but that is ridiculous. He's gonna propose to her as Mike. That's, oh my gosh. And more so than we haven't seen Karen and Matt go out on a date and profess their feelings for each other, we've seen even less of that with Mike, because Mike, well, first of all, it doesn't exist. He's not a real person. And second of all, he's only been around for a few issues. You get my point. I've harped on this too much. I'm going to move on. He's lovey-dovey. I love Karen, but I don't, I can't, she can never love a blind man, that kind of thing. And it's just, it's awful. I mean, this love triangle, this Matt, Karen, I'm not happy, Foggy love triangle has been awful. It's just been the worst. And it's still going on. So we do get some cool Gene Colan art here. It is Gene Colan still, right? Yeah, we get some cool Gene Colan art. He's working out. Meanwhile, here are the Masked Marauders henchmen still hanging out with, or still hanging out, trying to figure out what to do. Now, luckily, the Masked Marauder leaves a note for them to say, if you're reading this, it means Daredevil beat me, but Nelson and Murdock know who Daredevil really is. Go after them, learn their secret, and avenge my defeat. So they still have their marching orders from their incarcerated boss, so they still have a plan of attack. They do team up with a guy known as the Boss, whose henchmen wear purple. No, it's the Masked Marauders guys who wear the purple jumpsuits. And this guy in the yellow, he's the Boss. I kind of wish they could have consolidated this, because this Amazing Spider-Man number 50 that we're going to talk about next week, that's the first appearance of the Kingpin, which I'm super excited to start figuring the Kingpin into some stories, although he's not quite the menacing criminal mastermind in the beginning that we come to know him as. Frank Miller will sort of reinvent him in the 70s. We're not going to get there for a really, really, really long time, but it's cool to have him in the story. So I kind of wish, this would have been a good opportunity to introduce the Kingpin in place of the Boss, because right here we have the Boss, and then in the next issue of Spider-Man we have the Kingpin. There's too many top crime guys running around in Marvel Comics right now. But that would have been cool to put the Kingpin in here instead. But Daredevil swinging around. He's changing. He's super happy. He's changing clothes out on the balcony, or out on the ledge, not even a balcony. But he comes into the offices of Nelson and Murdock, and he discovers Foggy all tied up, and the bad guys have caught Karen. So he does this thing that he's done a few times to get her back, where he puts on his Daredevil suit, but he doesn't act like Daredevil. He how do I explain this? Well, you'll see. He walks in with a gun, says, "Karen, it's Daredevil. Where are you? I don't hear anyone." But he's like trying to. He's acting like he doesn't. He's acting like a regular blind guy that doesn't have super sensory abilities, so that when they unmask him, they'll see that it's Matt Murdock, but they won't really think that Matt Murdock is Daredevil because he's not, he's not hiding his blindness very well, I guess. So, but he's playing it. He's playing that way so that they don't suspect that he really is, in fact, Daredevil. One thing that I thought was funny was they yank his mask off, and he's got his glasses on underneath. I mean, you can't see wouldn't that make a thing? I did call that out in my tweets, but I just thought that was funny. But the rest of this is they tie him up. They've got Matt and Karen locked up together. They even say don't bother tying him up because what's a blind guy gonna do? Oh, I'm sorry, they do tie him up. I think maybe they don't lock the door or something because what's a blind guy gonna do? He's able to get out, and the rest of this is Daredevil taking down the bad guys, which is pretty cool. We get some cool. I love Daredevil fight scenes. I love seeing him flip around. Gene Colan is really great at that. But yeah, it's just Daredevil taking out the thugs for the rest of the issue. He puts down the boss. Because remember, Karen thinks that Mike Murdock is Daredevil. She doesn't know that Matt is Daredevil. I just love this. I just love the coolest thing about reading, especially reading all of Karen Page's escapades in these old issues, is that knowing where she ends up, like in Born Again. She's so sweet here, and she loves Matt so much, and Matt loves her. And then by the time we get to Born Again in I can't remember the issue numbers. The omnibus is right there, but by the time we get there, Karen is a drug addict who sells out Daredevil's secret identity just for her next fix. I mean, it's crazy how I love that. I mean, obviously that's a terrible story for a character, but knowing that she started as this, doughy-eyed secretary and she winds up a drug addict, adult film actress, so she can does all that just so she can get drugs, and she sells out Daredevil, which causes the Kingpin to completely ruin Matt Murdock's life because he gets a hold of the secret identity, and it's all because Karen wanted drugs. I mean, that's crazy. That's why Frank Miller's run of Daredevil is still considered one of the best run of any comics of all time, and it's 40 something years old. It's fantastic. But yeah, I'm jumping way, way, way too far in the future. We're not going to get there for good grief. Years. I mean, I might have to pick up the pace or something because I would really love to get there. I've read it before. I'd love to read it again. I want to read it in my new omnibus. I'm going to do that at some point. Anyway, this is pretty cool. They're coming at him from all sides, and all he does is jump out of the way, and they all smash into each other. And that's it. We get a little bit at the end between Karen and Matt. It says, Matt, you had called me earlier saying there was something you wanted to tell me. Yes, I remember. So it's one of those things where now that Karen has been kidnapped, he realizes that if they really were together, he said he even thinks if she became my wife, she'd never be safe for a minute. So I know Opie right here, omnibus. I can't wait to tear into that. All of these, and I've got more on the floor. But yeah, so it's one of those classic things where I can't be with the girl because she'll be in danger. It worked out well for Spider-Man. He and Mary Jane, the biggest threat to Peter and Mary Jane's marriage was Joe Quesada just deciding that he didn't want Peter and Mary Jane to be married because he himself didn't like them to be married, even though everybody else was cool with it. That's a discussion for another time. So this issue was all right. It's better than the last few, but the whole marrying, I'm going to ask her to marry me, but I don't know which identity I'm going to use. That was just, that was pretty terrible. All right. Moving on. Avengers number 41. Now, you guys know I haven't been loving Avengers. We are several weeks away, though, from starting to get into the good stuff. So I've got my Avengers Omnibus volumes 3 and 4 down here on the floor from when I was showing them off on the Anything New podcast last night. And that's where those reprint issues number 59 through the first issue, volume 3 is like 59 through 80 something, I think. And that's when it starts to get really good. We're at 41 now, so we've got maybe another 3 months or so before the Avengers actually starts getting really good, because up to this point, it hasn't been good. And I was even looking at like old Avengers omnibuses. I don't know that I want volumes 1 and 2 of the Avengers omnibus, because I haven't really enjoyed any of the issues through now. I just don't like them. You know, the stories haven't been that great. So, one cool thing about this issue, the coolest thing about this issue, is this right here. You can't, never mind. Well, hold on, I was going to try to zoom in. John Buscema, Roy Thomas and John Buscema. So, did they do, you know what, So, Roy Thomas has been writing it for a little bit. But this is the first John Buscema Avengers. And he is, I mean, classic. It doesn't get more classic than John Buscema drawing anything, really. He's one of the best. How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. All that stuff. Conan. I've got the Conan. Of course, I don't have the Conan with John Buscema. But, yeah, John Buscema. It doesn't really look a lot like John Buscema yet, but we're going to get into it soon. So, this is another thing to watch, kind of like when John Romita jumped onto Amazing Spider-Man. Sort of seeing him develop into his classic style. We're going to follow John Buscema over the next several weeks and months and seeing him develop into his. So this issue was kind of cool because it features Dragon Man and Diablo, who are primarily Fantastic Four foils. I don't want to say villains because Dragon Man's like a dragon android. He's not really a bad guy. He's just operating off instinct. But traditionally, they're associated with the Fantastic Four. But they're in the Avengers here. So that's pretty cool. Now, the first little bit of this is a little bit irritating and just done to death because it's just more Hawkeye arguing with a fellow Avenger. Oh, well, technically Hercules isn't an Avenger at this point. But it's just more Hawkeye arguing with a teammate or a comrade or a, acquaintance. And it's irritating. We're going to skip past it. Hercules does break Hawkeye's bow. It's pretty funny. But Hawkeye, he's made a little bit of progress over the last little while. He's gotten to be a little bit less of a hothead, but every now and then he regresses into a jerk that I don't like to read about. So we do get a little bit more of what Black Widow's doing, running around doing secret stuff for Nick Fury. And she actually... So they get to a point here where they don't mention countries anymore. Like in some of the older issues of Tales of Suspense, you'll hear Iron Man and the government talk about Red China and all this stuff. They sort of get away from naming specific countries, and I'm glad because it's a little bit, nowadays reading that stuff, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But instead, now they just say, we shift our scene to a top secret base in a certain Far Eastern power, which shall remain nameless and unrecognized. So they are really trying to distance themselves from name dropping any country specifically, and they're not even trying to hide it. So they are in some Far Eastern country that apparently is communist. Again, this was written in 1967. Don't send me any hate mail or hate tweets because I'm just going over what's in the book. But she goes behind enemy lines. She says that she has some blueprints that she stole last issue. I think it's for it's a new American submarine, which there's also an atomic sub in. I don't remember which book it's in. One of the ones that we've read. I think we'll get to it. But she's doing this in order to get behind enemy lines to see what this organization, we'll call it, is building. And they're building something called the Psychotron, which is just a weird looking thing. I don't know what part of this is the machine, or maybe it's all of it. But apparently she's not that great of a spy because they're already onto her. You know? Like they already throw her into a room and they turn it on. And she sees all this weird stuff. So I don't really know what any of that is. And that's all we get of this issue. So we're going to leave Black Widow here, trapped in this far eastern communist country. And they're using their new psychotron on her. And I guess we'll get more of that next issue, maybe. Anyway, back in Avengers land. Goliath gets hold of Dragon Man. And don't forget, Dragon Man is an android. And I did mention this panel here. Dragon Man is the most indescribably powerful android in existence. As a biochemist, I want to learn what makes him tick. And of course, I made note of that and says nothing could possibly go wrong with Hank Pym learning more about androids. So because we all know Hank Pym creates Ultron, which gives the Avengers all kinds of trouble for years to come. And we're actually not too far off from that either. So I wonder if, I know the origin of Ultron. I know how Ultron comes to be, but I don't know what leads Hank Pym up to doing that. So I do kind of wonder if his involvement here with Dragon Man, like if this is sort of like planting the seed for Hank Pym's work with robots and androids, and then we'll see that evolve into Ultron, which is also going to lead us into the Vision. That's going to be cool. I'm excited for Vision. I know Vision's around. He's first appearance in Avengers number 57? 56 or 57. So we are like 3.5 months away from that. Yeah. So he's got Dragon Man. They're recounting Dragon Man's battles with the Fantastic Four. When we last saw Dragon Man, he was hanging around with Diablo. Now, if you've seen these shows in the past when we talked about Diablo, I actually like Diablo pretty well. I think it's cool that he's sort of an alchemist. And which sounds kind of silly, but something about it. It was cool that he has all these potions and pellets and stuff that change things and do things, and he's able to utilize those to beat the good guys. I just thought there was something cool about that. This issue is a little bit more disappointing because he sort of falls back to using like ray guns and stuff instead of potions and chemicals and things like that. So it's a little bit more disappointing. But he turns a building gold to distract the Avengers away to go investigate that. And then while they do, and that's what they're doing here, I don't know why Hank needs to shrink down to ant size in the middle of a stampede, but whatever. So they go investigate the gold building. Hercules doesn't. But Diablo, while they're doing that, and the reason Diablo did that was so that he could go get Dragon Man. And we get some Bill Foster here. I don't know when Bill Foster does the Goliath thing. It's not for a long time, I don't think. So he goes to get Dragon Man. He says, Dragon Man is mine. He reactivates Dragon Man using something. A Dynadisc. Should take no more than a jolt from my Dynadisc to awaken that brainless Brobding Nagian brute. I don't know. That was a hard word to say. So he reactivates Dragon Man. Goliath rushes back in, starts fighting with Diablo. Wasp is there too. Dragon Man goes on the offensive. That's a cool panel right there. Dragon Man and Goliath going at it. I kind of like that. You can't really see. You can see the whole thing better in full page. But this bottom panel here is kind of neat. Gosh, we get most of this is Goliath versus Dragon Man. Nothing spectacular going on here. Just a knockdown, drag out fight. I did call out this panel, this top panel here, mentioning that Buscema is echoing Kirby, making you feel that impact. You can feel Goliath just drilling Ant-Man in the face. I'm sorry, not Ant-Man, Dragon Man. So that I like that. I like seeing that. Hawkeye busts in, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch is there too. It's just a knockdown, drag-out fight between Diablo and Dragon Man and the Avengers. He pulls the gold building down on the Avengers. and grabs Goliath and flies away. So what we don't know is, what is Diablo's plan? Like, why is he doing all this? And we're going to find that out next issue, because this is sort of a to be continued. So this was pretty cool. I like Dragon Man. I like Diablo. I liked them a little bit better when they were facing off against the Fantastic Four. But like I've always said, it's cool to see heroes face off against villains that they aren't normally associated with. So this was better than a lot of the issues of Avengers that we've read over the last little while. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. All right. Next up, we got Strange Tales number 157. This one doesn't zoom in right ever. I don't look at that. See, I don't know why it does that. Strange Tales number 157. Again, this is a double feature with Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Doctor Strange. I'm only reading the Nick Fury side of it. Nothing against Doctor Strange. I just didn't feel like I wanted to read Doctor Strange. So I've just been reading the Nick Fury stuff, and we have been getting the last, I don't even know how many issues we're on now with this whole Hydra thing. The Supreme Hydra taking on the face of Don Caballero, or the other guy, or S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Bronson, and now his real face is Baron von Strucker. Hydra being one step ahead of S.H.I.E.L.D. this whole time. Hydra managing to get a bomb on the helicarrier and sneaking in more Hydra agents, and so the president supposedly confining Nick Fury to quarters, and then we come to find out last week that it's actually Nick Fury who's been ahead of Hydra for a little while, and he's sort of manipulating them to figure out what their grand plan is. That story's been going on for a long time, and it's been great. Like when I mentioned classics earlier with Captain America and Red Skull, with Spider-Man and Green Goblin, with Batman and the Joker, Superman and Lex Luthor, another classic is Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. versus Hydra. And this story has been really, really good. So this is sort of what I think is the penultimate issue of this whole story that we've been reading. I think maybe it ends next issue, which I'll be reading in a few days, talking about next week. I'm not 100% sure, but it sure does feel that way. So remember, Hydra captured. So last issue, remember, Nick Fury stowed away on a ship. Hydra, or Baron von Strucker, under the guise of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Bronson, was taking Laura Brown to get medical help. But it turns out that they were actually taking her to Hydra Island. Nick Fury actually stowed away on that ship. He was on Hydra Island. And remember last week, it was just a cool issue of Nick Fury fighting a bunch of Hydra guys? That was really cool. We'll get more on that this issue. But at the end of that last issue, they captured Nick Fury. They strapped him to a table. He gets away. And I thought this panel was weird. And I can't zoom in because it does it that way. But Baron von Strucker's got like a weird Hulk face going on. I don't know why that is. And again, Jim Steranko writing and drawing this, which is probably why it's extra cool. Steranko with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. is just classic. So their big plan, Hydra's big plan, is there's basically a bioweapon on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. And they're going to detonate it, and it's going to release germs all over the world, basically. Almost like a pandemic that affects the entire world. Wouldn't that be weird? That would never happen. And they announced these plans to everybody last issue. So now Sitwell and Dum Dum and Gabe Jones are running around the helicarrier trying to find this bomb. So that's what S.H.I.E.L.D's doing over there. Meanwhile, Nick Fury gets away. He took one of his invisibility pills. Still don't know why it turns his pants invisible, but it is what it is. And we got Nick Fury running around Hydra Island. Look at this. This is awesome. This right here, this type of action with Nick Fury and Hydra is why I decided to start reading this. And it took a while to get here. But this is super cool. I can't get to it because there's figures in the way. I actually have a trade Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., a trade paperback that I got a long time ago that reprints a lot of these stories. And I never got around to reading it in trade, but these are the stories that I'm reading now. And this right here is why I started reading these, because I wanted to see some super spy Nick Fury going against evil super spy all that stuff. I wanted to see all this stuff, and it's really cool. So he's running around Hydra Island. Look at this. This is great. Nick Fury single-handedly laying waste to the entire Hydra organization. And don't forget, Nick Fury doesn't have any powers. He's just a soldier, right? But he's a good one. And he's just taking down all of Hydra. Now, this is a cool panel, or a cool page. I actually didn't tweet this out. Oh, wait. I'm on the wrong notes. Hold on. Oh, not Tales of Suspense, Strange Tales. I did call this one out. And I just said this is quite the page. I mean, this is really cool. They are pelting him with like a mind-bending vapor. So he's like seeing things, right? So that's why this page is so wacky. But he manages to get out of that, and it's finally down to Nick Fury and Baron von Strucker, which is pretty classic. Now, the only thing I didn't love about this is this MacGuffin. Like this, Baron von Strucker just pulls out this Satan claw. It looks like the Infinity Gauntlet without the Infinity Stones, right? And it's red, so it doesn't really look like it at all. But he pulls out this red gauntlet called the Satan Claw, and it gives him not powers per se, but it's a powerful gauntlet. It's got a lot of power and electrical powers behind it, and it gives him the upper hand over Fury. So we don't really know what it is, where it came from, anything like that. So I just kind of thought it was like, oh, okay, well, not that I need a backstory on everything, but it's just like, out of nowhere, Baron von Strucker has this thing that lets him have the upper hand. But then again, I guess if he didn't, we saw Nick Fury take down the entire Hydra organization. So if he didn't have that, if Strucker didn't have that, Fury would have taken him down pretty quick. But this issue ends in a cliffhanger. So we're going to get more of this story. Now, the reason I say that I think this is the penultimate issue is because it says next issue, final encounter. So I'm assuming that it ends next issue, right? So not a lot to say about this. The folks on the helicarrier are still trying to stop that bomb. Nick Fury is fighting Baron von Strucker on Hydra Island. And it's just so cool. I just love seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, Fury and Strucker. It's so cool to see them go at each other. This right here is why I decided to start reading this book. And we actually don't have... we've only got like 11 issues left because Strange Tales, at least as far as Nick Fury is concerned, ends with number 168. I think it switches to an Adam Warlock story for a couple issues, but I think it ends pretty quickly after that. But as far as Nick Fury is concerned, we've only got 10, 11 more issues with him. Now, he does go on to be in another, a new Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, which I'm probably going to read whenever we get there. But as far as Strange Tales goes, we've got another 3 months or less. But this was great. This was a really fun. Strange Tales has been... It's weird how the titles... Spider-Man's always going to be my favorite title. But then after that, it was Tales of Suspense and Daredevil were my top 3 favorites. Now it's Spider-Man still is number 1, but probably Strange Tales is number 2. So it's cool to see books, all comics ebb and flow. They have their good stories and their bad stories. But it's cool to see how one title can go from really good to really bad and then another from bad to good. That's what makes comics great. That's what's fun about reading a bunch of them, is because you get to see how they ebb and flow, how they go from good to bad and bad to good. So I love this one. I can't wait to see how it ends. The final encounter next issue. So I'm going to read that one on Thursday, and we will talk about it next week. I'm really excited for that one. And then the last one we have is Fantastic Four, number 63. So if you remember last issue, I was a little bit underwhelmed because I thought we were going to get some Reed in the Negative Zone action. But instead, it was just all about the Fantastic Four trying to get him out of the Negative Zone. They do it with the help of Triton from the Inhumans. At the end, Blastar gets out. Sandman grabs him, but there's not really a fight between them. That's okay, because this issue is literally nothing but fighting. My final thoughts on this one on Twitter were, wow, this was nonstop action from page 1. There wasn't anything major that happened except for a big slugfest between the Fantastic Four, Sandman, and Blastar, but sometimes that's all you need. So There's not going to be a lot to say about this issue because it's really just one big fight from the word go. They cave in Sandman and Blastar are on top of the Baxter building. They cave in the ceiling. Reed goes up to see what's going on. Blastar blasts him in the face because Blastar, he's like Kanshan from My Hero Academia, he's got the explosive hands. Blastar's like that, right? And this whole issue is just them all fighting. So Blastar is really powerful. It takes 3/4 of the Fantastic Four to take him down, and then the Thing goes off to fight Sandman, which I would have rather have seen the Thing fight Blastar, and we do get some of that. But I would have rather have seen them fight the whole time and let somebody else deal with Sandman. It's crazy that Sandman, at this point in time, was known as a Fantastic Four villain because I've always known him as the Spider-Man villain. So I'm interested to see when that transition happens. That'll be cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about this. This is just a big fight all over the city. That's a cool panel. Jack Kirby doing Jack Kirby things. I think I skipped a Thing panel. Nope. No, I didn't. Okay, hold on. We're going to get there. We're going to get to a really cool Kirby panel here in just a second. But yeah, I mean, it's Sandman and Blastar versus the Fantastic Four. They've already taken down Triton. So it's just the Fantastic Four left. Crystal, she does a little something too. I was going to say Crystal doesn't do anything, but I think she does a little something here. So like I said, we do get a little bit of Thing versus Blastar. But he eventually... Oh, here it is. Oh my goodness gracious. Kirby Impact, am I right? Kirby is so good at making you just feel these punches. I love... And I think it's maybe the way he draws the arc around, and then like in the middle of that, you see the person go flying. He does that better than almost anybody. Anytime I see any of this, there's another one of these in Captain America number 100 that we'll get to at the beginning of January. That's just as good, if not better than this. So this, I love the art of comic books, and this is just, when I see this, I love it. It's just so awesome. So the Thing eventually switches over to Sandman. They're trying to help Triton. They stick him in a jar full of water and nutrients, I guess. Reed knows that he's got something, a gadget that can help defeat Blastar. But he's like me when I'm looking for an audio cable or something and I'm digging through everything, I can't find it. Reed can't find it either. Meanwhile, the poor Thing is out there taking on both of these guys by himself. Johnny and Crystal, well, Johnny got the wind knocked out of him. Right here, Blastar grabs Crystal, and this is where she sort of uses her elemental power to whip up a tornado and kind of catches... Whoops, wrong way. Kind of catches Blastar off guard. But she's no match for him. Johnny comes back in, tries to absorb the blast, redirect it back at Blastar, but that doesn't really work. Meanwhile, Sandman is rolled up Ben and thrown him into the water, which I would have thought that the Sandman... Ben knocks him into the water. I would have thought that Sandman falling into water would have been like a weakness because Spider-Man beats him with fire hydrants all the time, but I guess not. Or actually, it does sort of... It makes him disperse to where he can't come back together for a while. So that's kind of how they... I won't say defeat, but that's how they incapacitate him for a while. And then the rest of it is Blastar versus the rest of the Fantastic Four. Reed has this helmet that just basically short circuits him, and he can't access his power anymore. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Marvel, I don't know if this was just Stan doing this, but women in Marvel Comics were written so poorly in the 60s. They finally defeat him, and Sue says, "Reed, darling, is it over? Is it really over at last?" Reed says, "You bet it is. Blastar is helpless now." That should have been it, but then Sue goes on to say, "Forgive me for suddenly turning feminine." It's so awful. It's so hard to read that kind of stuff nowadays. But Yeah, the helmet, by cutting off the pressure buildup in your body, you become as vulnerable as any man. So they put this helmet on him, it knocks out his powers, and they throw him back in the negative zone, presumably. And that's it. So, like I said, nothing major, nothing really to focus on in this issue, but this was just really action packed. And you know what was cool too is seeing the villain defeated this way with Reed just delivering a punch. You know, I mean, sure, he put the high tech helmet on, but Reed then after that, not even stretching or anything, not even a big rubbery hammer fist, just Reed just socks him in the jaw and that's it. So it's always kind of cool. I do love depictions. Like I like the way Jack Kirby draws Reed Richards. Like check, Reed Richards is swole right there, and I like anytime Reed is depicted as a little bit more muscular, which he probably shouldn't be. But then again, I guess he could be because he's elastic. He can make his arms that big. But that's very reminiscent of the beginning of the Jonathan Hickman run of Fantastic Four in like the mid 2000s, I think, with Dale Eaglesham on art. Dale Eaglesham, like this almost looks like a Dale Eaglesham panel. So I wonder if, I'm assuming maybe he took some influence from Jack Kirby because that's how he draws his Reed as well. I know that's a dumb thing to focus on, but again, I really love examining the art of comics and like really honing in on the art. I love how certain characters are drawn and how certain artists draw certain characters. And so that's just one thing I noticed. I just love the swole Reed there. But yeah, that's going to be it, guys. That's all your comics from June 1967. So like I said, I'm already a couple issues into the July issues as well. Been tweeting about those and posting on Instagram now. So if you want to follow those issues as I read them throughout the week, follow me on the Twitters at _Comics Daily. Don't forget that underscore right there at the beginning. Or the new Instagram, Comics Daily IG. That's the name I had to go with. Don't forget the underscore there as this one. Don't forget the underscore there as well. But yeah, those two socials will have a lot of these panels from a lot of these books, panels and pages and things that I notice and things I like to call out, that kind of stuff. I post a different issue every day. Like I said, every week of Our Time Now is a month's worth of publication. I've got a schedule. If you go to the Comics Daily Twitter, there's a pinned tweet that actually takes you to a shared Google spreadsheet that shows you the schedule of everything I'm reading all the way through the end of 2022, which will be, I think, like mid-70s by then, which is going to be super awesome. Well, yeah, actually, the end of 2022 gets us to the end of 1976. So by the end of 2022, we are in the thick of the Bronze Age, which is my favorite age of comics. And I'm super stoked for that. So so we're just, like I said, every week is a different month. Here in a little bit, we'll be done with 68. We'll be rolling on into 69, and then by May of next year, we'll be into 1970 and on into more cool stories like that. So guys, I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for watching. And again, remember, I've got my new YouTube channel now. So if you're watching this on YouTube, then you've already found it. If you're watching it maybe through the VODs on Twitch, or maybe you're catching the live streams, you want to watch some later, all of these episodes of Comics Daily Weekly are on YouTube. You can go to either of these social media accounts. I've got a link tree in the profile, which has all the links for YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, all that stuff. You can find all those links in the profile for either of these social accounts. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, talking comics, comics from 1967. And we'll be back next week with comics from July 1967. So thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.